Welcome to the Winter 2023 Mystery Quilt. This is clue number 4. Today we will be using the secondary background fabric, the dark fabric, and a variety of the jelly roll strips. You can use 5 half strips or 3 whole strips. It all depends on the amount of prints that you want to see in the quilt top. From the secondary background fabric, cut 3 strips that are 2 7/8 inch by the width of fabric. From these strips, you will need to cut 36 squares that are 2 7/8 inch by 2 7/8 inch. I'm cutting through 4 layers of fabric here, and as I cut the squares, I pull the pile of squares away gently to keep them stacked up nicely, but I need to give myself some room in between the piles for the next cutting step. Once you're done cutting the squares, you need to bisect the piles once, corner to corner, to get 72 triangles. I like to use a long, narrow ruler to help make the bisecting of the squares easier. From a variety of the jelly roll strips, cut 36 squares that are 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. I've got them all lined up, and I use my 12.5 inch square ruler and cut on the 12.5 inch, the 10 inch, 7.5 inch, 5 inch, and 2.5 inch markings. This helps me save time and make more cuts that are accurate. From the dark fabric, you need to cut 3 strips that are 4 7/8 inch by the width of the fabric. Next, we need to cut 18 squares that are 4 7/8 inch by 4 7/8 inch. When I lay out the fabric to cut the squares, I'm going to cut one of the strips on the fold so that I can layer them with 3 layers on each pile. So 1 full strip and 1 half strip on each of the piles. Now that the squares are cut, we need to bisect each pile once, corner to corner, to get 36 triangles. From the background fabric, cut 2 strips that are 8.5 inches by the width of fabric. From these 2 strips, you will cut 24 rectangles, 2.5 inches by 8.5 inches. These rectangles are going to be put right into the bag for the number 4 clue. Make sure to double check as you cut to make sure you're getting the right measurements. I also highly recommend counting the number as you go so that you know you have the right number of rectangles cut. Sometimes if I forget to count, I get to the end and I don't have enough because I wasn't being careful about making sure I cut the right amount. From the dark fabric, cut 1 strip that is 2.5 inches by the width of fabric. From that strip, cut 12 squares that are 2.5 inches by 2.5 inches. You will need to tuck these squares into the bag with the background rectangles that you just cut. I'm going to put my cut pieces to sew into these handy little trays from the Dollar Tree store. It'll help keep them organized on the way to the sewing machine. And while I've been cutting my regular colorway, I've also been working on my floral version. Start by piecing the secondary background triangle pieces right sides together to one side of a jelly roll square. You'll want to line up the sides so they're flush and the tips of the triangles will hang off the sides. This is correct. You will need to use all 36 of the jelly roll squares. When you're done sewing, cut them apart and press towards the triangle. If you're enjoying our mystery quilt, we hope that you will take some time to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any of the clues. Once you're done pressing, it'll be time to piece another secondary background triangle to the adjacent side of the square. I'm just going to flip this whole pile upside down so I can position it right on top of the triangle. And again, you want to make sure that those triangles are hanging off the edge. You want to make sure that the triangle is positioned correctly so that the resulting unit will make a large triangle. You're going to sew all 36. Once you've got them all sewn, you need to cut them apart and again, press towards the triangle. Now it's time to piece the large dark triangle to this unit. The piece triangle and the dark triangle should be the same size. You are making 36 of these blocks. Once all these are sewn, but before I head to the ironing board to press, I'm going to trim the little triangles that hang off the edge in the middle. I'm also going to cut on both ends. I'm going to cut tiny triangles so that there won't be any dog ears once I've got the block pressed. This part is a little tedious, but it's worth it in the end to not have these little pieces sticking out. Once they're all trimmed, it's time to head to the ironing board and press towards the dark fabric. These blocks should measure 4.5 inches by 4.5 inches. You can trim if necessary. The last sewing step is to get the 2.5 inch by 4.5 inch background rectangles from the Clue 1 bag and piece them to these blocks. Make sure you are piecing it to the dark triangle side as shown. The jelly roll square on the left side should lead the way through the machine. I like to find a visual to help give me something to check to make sure I'm sewing it correctly. For these units, you will press toward the triangle or the dark and away from the background rectangle. And that's the last step for clue number 4. I've been working on this bright colorway, but I've also been working on my floral colorway. All that's left to do is to put them in the Clue 4 bag with the pieces we cut earlier and store them away until Clue 5 comes out. Don't forget to gather up any extra fabric and scraps to store in the main project bag. A downloadable version of this pattern may be found in the Files section of our Facebook group called The Quilted Forest Friends, or you can push pause and take notes, or take screenshots to print at home. We will see you next week for clue number 5. We hope that you will like, comment, share, and subscribe. Thanks for watching and happy quilting!